We now move over to the Middle East for our next story, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has slammed protesters who are rallying in Jerusalem and across the cities in Israel, demanding a hostage deal and an end to the war in Gaza. The Prime Minister has likened the protesters with fascists and has accused them of being involved in vandalism. Protests are intensifying in Israel, especially by the family members of the hostages who demand immediate ceasefire and the return of their family members. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Netanyahu is planning to expand the Gaza offensive in the westward side of the Strip. Earlier, the Israel Defense Forces dropped leaflets asking the residents to move south. Israeli forces are intended to put more forces on the ground. Let's listen in to what the Prime Minister of Israel had to say.
אתם מדברים על דמוקרטיה? אתם מדברים ומתנהגים בדיוק כמו פשיסטים. בדמוקרטיה, הפגנה זה דבר לגיטימי. אבל מה שקורה בהפגנות הממומנות, המאורגנות, הפוליטיות נגד הממשלה, שהן פרצו כל גבול.
These protesters have gathered near the residence of the Prime Minister as the protests intensify. Let's listen in to some of their statements.
והיום מה הוא אומר? אני שומע עכשיו שהוא קורא לנו פלנגות. אנחנו פלנגות, אתם מבינים? תתבייש לך ראש הממשלה, תתבייש לך. אני לא אתן לך להחזיר אותו בסכין! בושה תתבייש! איך אתה יכול לראות אותו גוסס ולא לעשות כלום? זה שואה! זה במשמרת שלך! תתבייש, תתביישו!
אנחנו כאן, כי הייתה קריאה של משפחת החטופים, וגם בלי הקריאה שלהם היינו באים, כדי שישחררו את החטופים, כדי שהממשלה המושחתת שלנו וראש הממשלה המושחת ילכו כבר הביתה. אנחנו נעשה את הכל עד שזה יקרה, וזה ברור שזה יקרה. זה רק שאלה של זמן, והם ילכו, והכל יהיה טוב בסוף.
We are now joined by Shruti Dasgupta. She is an international affairs expert and she joins us live from New Delhi. Shruti, as always, a pleasure. A lot to unpack here. Let's first start with the statements that Netanyahu has been saying about his own residents. We've seen thousands of people march across Tel Aviv and other cities in Israel. Of course, Israel brands itself as the only liberal democracy in the Middle East, in the region. And he has branded these people who have come out and protested against his government as, quote, fascists. What does this reveal about the growing domestic pressure for the Israeli Prime Minister?
Greetings, Thomas, to you and your viewers. Unfortunately, the term that he's using is coming from the fact that the protesters decided to light a ring of fire 100 meters around his residence. And that is the threat that he's calling out as fascist, and a threat not only to himself but to his family members and the Israeli security forces that seem to surround him. So that is where his angst is stemming from. The internal domestic politics is very, very skewed right now. The opposition is gaining more and more momentum because they've decided to put hostages first and Hamas later on. And this is what most of Israelis and the reservist forces themselves are asking Netanyahu and his coalition government to consider, that please do not continue your Operations Gideon's Chariot Part 2, where you walk into the rest of the Gaza city and try and occupy as much as you can of the Gazan land. And in return, you will end up pushing the Hamas to pull the final plug on the lives of the remaining live hostages. So people want their dead back. They want if there is a chance, a small sliver to get even a single live hostage back from Hamas, they don't want to let it go. And they are demanding that Netanyahu bend a little on his rules and get this accomplished first. But Netanyahu and his team have decided that they want a complete transfer of hostages, not a piecemeal deal where a small section is released and then the next set of ceasefire goes through. So this deadlock has led to complete loss of hope for Israelis that there will be peace before Gaza is destroyed. And the extension of the reservist forces, as well as the IDF and the others coming out and saying that this is not something that the IDF is equipped for, and this is not something that they can condone or survive, then the people on the streets are asking their government to think twice. So when he calls them fascists, he's instead calling his own voters fascists, and it shows that he's losing fast control of the local narrative.
Shruti, we see not just condemnation from within Israel, but of course from all around the world. People are intending to recognize a Palestinian state at the end of this month in response to the humanitarian crisis that has been caused by this war, with over 80% of Gaza destroyed, according to reports from within the area. And Israel's chief of staff saying that this offensive, this highly controversial offensive, will continue until Hamas is quote unquote defeated and hostages are also freed. Is that a realistic military objective, or is this just an open-ended campaign by the Netanyahu government?
They can, of course, completely destroy Gaza if they actually choose to do so. But the price would be the remaining hostages and their lives, as well as any kind of international political currency. They will not be able to negotiate. They might just face heavy sanctions. And also, the Palestinian state will get worldwide recognition, which we're seeing as the months of this war go forth. More and more nations are coming forth to align themselves with the Gazans and the Palestinian cause. Whenever I've spoken about this issue, I've called it a mouse cheese trap, where the cheese were, unfortunately, the hostages that were taken on October 7th, and the trap itself are the tunnels and the urban warfare forced upon the IDF by the Hamas in a well-planned move to make the world pay attention to Gaza and the Palestinian agenda. Whenever they, unfortunately for the rest of the world, they are unable to understand that they are falling for the Hamas propaganda. They never thought they're going to destroy Israel. They never thought they're going to end Jews all over the world. They wanted their state, and this is the way they have chosen to do it, by provoking Israel into a war which they knew that Netanyahu would enact with all of brutality, which we can see right now. And the cost would be paid in Gazan lives, and the result would be the birth of the Palestinian state. So this mouse cheese trap has been effectively triggered, and the world is falling for it. Netanyahu is going to pay for it in terms of his political future, as well as Gazan lives and Israeli lives in the bargain. So it is an unfortunate situation. The world is a little naive if they feel that the Palestinian cause is a big deal. It isn't. They are all Arabs. The word Palestine, if its etymology is looked at, comes from the Hebrew word Palestine, which means infiltrators. There was a British mandate before that. There was an Ayyubid mandate before that. There were Egyptian Mameluke mandates before that. There was never a Palestinian state in existence throughout the history of the Arab world. This is an artificial construct which the Hamas wanted and which they're going to get at the cost of Gazan lives.
Thank you very much, Shruti Dasgupta, for joining us. We will here on NewsX World, of course, bring you all the updates from